glad, like I said, to see some leaves falling on the ground. I'm in the minority. I like fall, winter, everybody else.
Well, I'm glad to see the leaves falling, because it's gonna get cooler.
Yeah.
And
You don't like cold, but,
I don't like it really cold.
so if it was,
I
yeah.
like October and March.
You can handle high 70, low 50 every day. If I offered you that, you take that, 75. I like it. To me, I always said perfect weather is like if I'm out in the sun, I'll get hot, but when I get in the shade, you get a little bit, I don't know, there's just certain days in the fall where
Yeah.
it's just perfect like that, where the humidity's down and then sun's beaming enough. Like I said, if you're out in the sun, you'll get hot, and then you get right underneath that tree for a second and you feel that chill. So it won't be long. Like I said, it's amazing how I bet quit wishing the months away, because they go by fast and fast. So I figured it out as okay, at 55 years old. So, but anyway, again, hope the week was good. As we continue, we're getting into Daniel chapter 7. So now we have, we're going to look at in the, I can't remember, I left my book at home. I was so wrapped up in it, but verses 1 through 8, I think it's just one day in the book. So, so we're going from the historical accounts of chapters 1 through 6 to the beginning of Daniel's prophecies. And so I just want to do a quick review of just, kind of one sentence synopsis of each of the first chapters right here. We get into chapter 1. Of course, that's, Daniel and his friends are young, taken into exile in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar is wanting to convert them over to becoming Babylonians. And first thing we see is them refusing to eat king's food. And in order to, so they do that, they want to remain pure under God's law. They ask for different food, stuff like that. So, so again, just starting there. Chapter 2, this is where we see the statue dream. We're going to be referring a lot to that today. It can be interpreted by Nebuchadnezzar's people, so he calls on Daniel. Daniel, of course, interprets it. And he ascends, I guess that begins his ascension into, I don't know what the word, the Babylonian bureaucracy, I guess. So this is where he starts gaining his favor with Nebuchadnezzar. And we see at the end of chapter 2 in verse 47, basically Nebuchadnezzar recognizes God, but he just describes at this time God as a God of gods and a revealer. It's kind of how he puts it. Chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar thought he was turning the corner there a little bit, builds a statue, demands the worship. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refuse. They're thrown into the furnace. They're unharmed. And once they come out unharmed, unsinged, not even touched, Nebuchadnezzar, in verse 29, decrees that if you speak anything against the God Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, there's going to be issues there. Chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar's dream of a tree being cut down. This is where he is humbled because of his pride. And he has to live like the beast until he acknowledges God's sovereignty. After it's 7 years, and he's restored. And this is where Nebuchadnezzar praises and exalts, and I can't read my writing there, and honors the King of Heaven. King, capital K. That's in verse 37 of chapter 4. Chapter 5, Belshazzar hosts a feast, defiles the vessels from the temple of Jerusalem. The hand appears and writes Nebuchadnezzar's fate on the wall, and Babylon falls to the Medo-Persian Empire that night. And then last week we finished up where Daniel's thrown into the lion den because King Darius is tricked by his jealous officials, and they convince him to issue a decree to outlaw praying to anyone but Darius himself. So they kind of prey on his pride there, so to speak. P-R-E-Y there. Daniel prays to God. They tell on him, so he has to put Daniel in the lion's den because he can't retract the law. And as I said, if you can't retract the law, then he just issue another decree. I don't know. Anyway, we get into that sort of. But anyway, verse 26, Darius decrees that every dominion in the kingdom should tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. So that kind of gets us where we are here today in chapter 7, where we begin with Daniel's first vision. And in this, I got a little, as I'm looking through this, and again, I'm going to tell you what, as I said, I'm going to do better. I've never been good at props, because between what I think and what it actually is and all that, you know, I get nervous because I just want to make sure I'm right. Or not right, or at least lead you in the right direction, is what I'm trying to say. So when I'm in doubt, I'll definitely say, this is more today, it's more historical. I think as we go through the rest of the chapter, it kind of gets into some of the things, so, and I got most of this out. I can't think of it, it's great time. The brown book is pretty good size, what's his name?
Jay Bernaghy.
Yeah, most of this comes from that. I like it, it's pretty straight. I like, he's just straightforward, that's what I like about it. But chapter 7, we're in, this is the first year of King Belshazzar. Chapter 8 is the third year of King Belshazzar. We get chapter 9, it's the first year of Darius. Chapter 10 is the first year of Cyrus. And chapters 11 and 12 is also in the first year of Darius as well. And as we said, you know, this is not in chronological order. So that's one of the things I always have to stop and think, because sometimes I get confused that, you know, things don't, it's just not, it's not linear. So, but, you know, so what we're looking at right here is we kind of get into to the verses right here. I'm just going to go ahead and read all 8 verses, and that way we'll have them out there so we can reference them. And just starting in chapter 7 and verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in a vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and the man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, the second like a bear, and it was raised upon itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had a great iron teeth that devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and mouth speaking great things. So we got a lot of imagery there, and when you get to thinking about it, you know, of course I kind of chuckled. I was like, if I ever opened a rib place, I think I may just use that as you know, the bear with 3 ribs in his mouth, and just call it Daniel, you know, or something. I don't know, but you can tell I'm from the South. But on a serious note, so let's kind of look at this. Verses 1 and 2 right here. Of course, this vision occurs about 14 years prior to the fall of Babylon. It's guessed to be about 553 BC. So we got to realize that what we're having presented to us in chapter 7 occurred before the events that occurred in chapters 5 and 6 in the historical account. So that kind of gets us in there. Daniel is estimated to be about 78 to 70 years old at this time. So it kind of starts out right there, kind of before we get into that, and I'm just getting too excited because I had some questions after the historical review there, but just kind of getting into that before we really get going. You know, there's been a common theme in Daniel's character so far, hasn't there, in the first 6 chapters? What's been the common theme of Daniel's character so far?
He's very devoutly worships the way his God.
He has stood his ground on his beliefs despite what would have to be tremendous pressure, probably from the religious side, politically, and probably even from self-preservation. Because when you're in that situation, I can see where people say, I think it might be better if I just kind of go along with the crowd right here and see if I can ride this out. So, doesn't make that right. I'm just saying that just says more about Daniel. Hey, that's faith right there. And as far as the rulers, what would you say is the main flaw that all the rulers have shown? I think there's been a couple characteristic flaws each of them show. Each one of these, Nebuchadnezzar, Darius, Belshazzar, all of them. What's been their common downfall? Arrogance, pride. So, I was reading back and I had forgotten, just some of the things there about how, like Belshazzar, when handwriting's on the wall, he would, I think if a hand showed up, I'd be believed that, he hadn't even got it out of his mouth right there, and boom, his kingdom fell. Of course, Nebuchadnezzar had to be humbled for 7 years. Darius was taking advantage of, hey man, you need to make a law where only people can pray to you. That sounds pretty cool. And then, he didn't think out, the consequences right there. But at the end of it all, no matter how powerful those rulers are, what do they all, at the end of the day, what do they come to realize?
Daniel's God is the one true God.
Daniel's God is the true God. God's sovereignty is going to rule no matter that basically, at the end of the day, who decides? It's not them being all powerful, it's God that decided they have the power. So anyway, just kind of getting all that back in our mind right here, and just as far as an opinion question, what do you think Daniel divided his book up like he did? Why? All this, why not put this as he's writing, the events of what's happening right there? Again, this is opinion. Do you think it just sets it out better, or no reason at all? That's just the way he was divinely led to do it, obviously. But I'm one of those. I have to. When it comes to history, I'm linear. I want it right there. But yeah, so I think again, just looking at, I think it's probably, I guess, the background information of the historical probably sets up, especially, this first division right here. As we see, we're going to go back and forth as how it relates to the statue there in the vision of chapter 2. So as we get into it right here, back to verses 1 and 2 right here. First of all, I think this is something here. Like I said, I kind of chuckle because I'm guilty of this. The last part of verse 1 says, "Then he wrote the dream down." How many times have you had a thought right there and I remember that, and you wake up the next morning or you wake up? So Daniel's a lot smarter than us, wasn't he? So he wrote down. But I really want to call our attention to verse 2. "The four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea." And a lot of times right there, the four winds of heaven, and what that is, kind of what that's referring to is basically the chaos of the world, the people of the world, and the seas is kind of, that's kind of as we look at it right here. I forgot to write that note down, but basically the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great. So it's just kind of referring to turmoil, chaos, and things of that nature. So as we go through right there in that, it's kind of setting the stage here that the four winds of the heaven strove upon the sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. So from that chaos, these four beasts. And so we're going to look at verse 4 right here. And it says, "The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings." That's pretty descriptive right there. I said that, you picture a lion with eagle's wings. And, and to me, that's, anytime I see, even some of the architecture, some of those older, early 20th century buildings, you see a lot of not necessarily that, but it kind of reminds me of some of those things you see, I don't know. I don't know how I'd react if I saw a lion with eagle's wings, but pretty descriptive. So let's see what that possibly could represent. It says, "I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and the man's heart was given to it." Right there. So what this is, what this represents right here, of course, is the king. It's the kingdom of Babylon, and obviously, what part of the statue represented Babylon back in chapter 2? That was the head of gold. So we'll kind of get, you know, some of this, and again, from this commentator, and I kind of like him. So the lion with the eagle's wings. And what's significant about the eagle's wings? You know, I'm kind of glad, I don't know, sometimes the way Pilgrim jumps, I think she can fly, but I mean, a cat that can fly.
Speed.
Yeah, it represents speed, and basically what the commentator that I used here, he refers to it, the speed of the armies at the time of, you know, if you think about it, probably when the Egyptians, back all the way back, you know, they had the chariots and things, so they're able to mobilize their forces and their armies very quickly. And so that was, and if you read through military history, you can see how, you know, being able to mobilize and move your forces quickly was a great advantage. So it kind of, you know, it referenced that, and so in the lion with the eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand. So something happened to the wings; they were plucked. So what does that do to his mobility? It kind of limits it, don't it? And then he was referencing there that's when wings were plucked, that's when Nebuchadnezzar was humbled, when he had to spend the 7 years living as a beast and things of that nature. And then it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand. Of course, that is referencing, you know, kind of his restoration after he acknowledges the fact, you know, that God is sovereign. And then the last part of verse 4, and it says, "And a man's heart was given to it." And of course that's referencing Nebuchadnezzar's conversion right there that you have. So kind of just summing up verse 4, talking about Babylon, and you know, and just a few other things that I found, and as I was studying this, is at the gates of Babylon there were sculptures of lions that were winged. They had winged lions at the gate. So obviously, you know, that kind of fits. You know, definitely you can see that, and I think I've read somewhere where even in some of the ancient ruins they actually found lions on pedestals and things of that nature.
I've read where that was their national symbol.
That was their national symbol.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, he liked the lion. So it all makes sense right there. I think you know, anybody that would be familiar with the Babylonian Empire at that time, you know, that would be almost like referencing the eagle here in the United States. You know, that's something that we would really tie into probably at that time. You know, the head of gold, just kind of referring to that, he just said that was kind of, you know, he references that kind of just the outward glory of the advanced civilization, but he said that the cruel nature of the lion kind of describes the paganism of the Babylonian Empire. So it's so again we go from there. Of course, as we said, the Babylonian Empire falls to the Medo-Persians, and kind of getting that's what we get to. So let's take a look now at verse 5, and it says, "Behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised itself on one side. It had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh." So now we move on here. So this is the Medo-Persian Empire, and it's the arms of silver is the part from the statue in Daniel chapter 2. So it raised itself on one side. What, I mean, any ideas there or thoughts? Because again, I'm kind of dominating the discussion right now, so it's hard because this is kind of getting information out there as we look at this in chapter 7 next couple of weeks.
Well, there was 2 countries
Yep.
that came together, and Persia, I believe, was the one that was the most dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's thought that raising up on that side would show the dominance of Persia.
Yeah. So that's the one side raising up. Also, like I said, the gentleman in the book, he talked about it, said, think of it that maybe perhaps being ambidextrous, where, so kind of we look right here, this is the Babylonian Empire, and what I tried to find was maps that were overlaid over modern, today's country, so we kind of get a good idea.
So you can kind of see right there, we got Iraq, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, there's Jordan. So all this area right here up into Turkey is kind of where the Babylonian Empire was stretched. So in that orange right there, so if you go to the next slide for me, Jeff, we'll go to the Medo-Persian right there. That one's a little bit harder to see, but you can see that the outline of the yellow right there. That's kind of how the Medo-Persian Empire stretched. So we can see it kind of, it's getting up into Macedonia, Bulgaria, some of those Baltics, Georgia, Armenia, so Azerbaijan, so, people we watch Cook all the time, that would be in there. That's some background there. So we can kind of see the expansion there of that. And there's some different ones in there, but like I said, for the most part right there, 500 BC is kind of where that is, and it kind of gives you the modern countries today where we're referring to. So basically, we'll kind of get into it here in just a second, but it says ambidextrous. It conquered, talked about conquering Babylon, perhaps with its left hand. So Babylon's right up there, where Iraq is in that general area, and then conquering Egypt. And then the three ribs in the mouth of between it is referring to it's conquering Egypt, Babylon, and then if you hit the next one there for me, Jeff, Lydia, and there's Lydia right there as well. So those are kind of that's what the three ribs are. It was the commentaries say represent. So you kind of see that's a little bit further to up into the north and northwest part of that part of the world. So from there in verse 5, it talks about it's wanting it to devour much flesh. Now, if you'll notice here, it just describes it as a bear. How would you describe how a bear moves? Lumbers. That's exactly what I wrote down. I love the term lumbering because when you work with offensive linemen, we don't run, we lumber. So, but yeah. So it's not talking. It's more speed. But how does the bear make up for its lack of? Well, and I've heard bears can run pretty good, but let's just say their lack of agility. How do they make up for it? Fierceness. That's one.
Strength.
Their strength. Yeah. And, you see bears when you see on those nature shows when they hit somebody or when they hit another animal, it knocks it over. I mean, I've used that, with linemen. Hey, when you punch it, you need to punch with it like a bear, and knock them linemen off of it. But yeah, so it's there were no wings. It's more lumbering, a rumbling, lumbering bear. Sounds like Keith Jackson there for all you who grew up watching Keith Jackson on college football. So it was more of strength, overwhelming. At one time, for example, when the Medo-Persians were defeated by the Greeks, it was a force of about 300,000 men and about 300 ships. And so it's more large, overwhelming armies. And I don't know, and again, that's where I'm going to have to refer to you. Is this kind of more, is this also, even with the bear, kind of even almost referencing perhaps what would have from modern day Russia or anything like that? Or I don't know, or am I stretching that a little bit? I don't know. That's just some thoughts I had in my head. And of course, when I think of bear, growing up in the 70s and during the Cold War, when I think of the bear, I think of Russia. But it's kind of more. If you thought about it, I always thought of studying history during the times of East-West Cold War, where I can remember. I remember Dad. He used to talk. I don't know why he would talk to an 8 or 9-year-old about stuff because it scared me to death. Because then I made the mistake of going to the encyclopedia, World Book Encyclopedia, and looking up civil defense and stuff, and realizing talking about nuclear wars, 8 or 9, so I got scared. But he was talking about how the biggest worries that the West has was that basically the Soviet Union had so many tanks and stuff that they would just be able to overwhelm West Berlin and stuff by sheer numbers instead of more of agility. I don't know. That's just, I guess maybe that was what was in the back of my head when I saw that. But
Well, there was a time when the United States built all those bomb shelters and the courthouses had, in case there was a raid, and schools were, of course, a lot of times they would do drills and you had to get under your desk.
Duck and cover.
That was going to help.
Yeah, and a nuclear blast. but yeah, you can still, some of the older courthouses, if you go, like especially when you go down, you'll still see the old fallout shelter signs and stuff like
And
that, so.
everybody was told to keep 2 weeks of food, medicines.
Yeah, no, I can remember my dad, when he was talking about the Cuban Missile, that they were legit, people were legitimately, scared during that.
We went and looked at a house a year or so ago, and they had a nuclear fallout shelter that was built, the house was built in the sixties.
Yeah.
They actually had one.
So it kind of, I guess, the détente, as they say, was starting to occur back when I was born in 1970. So during the 70s, it was kind of starting to ease, and it was kind of, I almost, like I said, I enjoy history and stuff, and I almost went into that. But every coach in the world coaches history. I wanted to be a little different, so I like science too. So anyway, but yeah, like I said, especially World War II history, and then the geopolitical. Anyway, we're getting off the rails here a little bit. All right. So it divided much flesh, and it was the Medo-Persians were more for just overwhelming force more than the speed and agility. And so we get up to verse 6, and after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon its back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So now we kind of get to the third beast, and now we're going to be looking at the Greeks, and they gave me there's another name for it in that Greco-Macedonian or something along that line there. I just referred to it Greek, Alexander the Great, and so let's kind of look at him. And of course, the kingdom represented with this third is the Greeks I just put Greeks, Alexander the Great, and the statue in Daniel 2, the sides of brass. That's kind of what that represents. And that also, we see the 4 wings we've already established. Again, the Greek army, known for its mobility, that's the same thing. Now here's the thing, and this is something I think I had to stop and think about. The first two Babylon and that was during Daniel's time. What about the Greeks? That was about 200. That's about 2 centuries later. So it's fulfilled, but so now we're kind of getting in where, hey, this is getting into some heavy stuff now, because we're talking about, I think this was maybe 300 BC around in there. I don't have the exact dates written down, but the 4 wings, that's the speed and agilities. And one of the things was the speed and agility was greater than Babylon. It said it would have made, the commentator said, you can tell he's from the south, he said the speed and agility of the Greek army would have made the Babylonian army look like a slow moving train in Arkansas. So I was sitting there thinking I think a more relative version would be maybe like the tanks and perhaps the strategy of modern day tanks compared to the cavalry of the 1800s. At the time, the cavalries of the 1800s were pretty mobile with the horses and stuff, but obviously that would be nothing compared to modern day mechanized armies of today. And so, and again, I know of Alexander the Great. I hadn't read into his history much. I didn't realize that he was killed in his 30s, or he died in his 30s.
Yeah.
33.
Was he assassinated, or he just?
He got shot and then died of an infection, I believe.
Okay, so he died.
Shot with an arrow.
Yeah, died. So.
Or a wound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
I think
like.
it was an arrow.
So not up to date on my Greek history of ancient world, so I have to. But I can remember studying it a little bit in Dr. Salmon's class down at Walker College. Of course, he was he lived in Empire, Alabama, in Walker County. So if you didn't know where a location was on your test, if it was fill in the blank, if you put Empire, he'd give you half credit, half time, just for being fun. Where was the Treaty of Versailles signed? Empire, Alabama. Half off. So anyway, I'm sure he's passed on, but he was. I can still picture, because me and him had some good discussions. It was right before, because I told you, it was about a year before. I said, I think Germany's going to be reunited here in the next couple of years, and it turned out I was right when about a year before the walk. So I walked in the next year, and he's like, Scott, you was right. He goes, maybe he did go into politics. I'm like, nope, don't think so. But anyway, the four heads refer after Alexander the Great's death. His empire was divided up by four generals, and just kind of some of those. Cassander, that general, kind of was over Macedonia. Again, these Greek names, kind of wanted to entertain y'all by me trying to say them. Lysimachus, I knew I butchered that, but Asia Minor. Seleucus is Syria, and Ptolemy, I can say that one. He ruled Egypt, and then eventually from there, Cleopatra kind of arose from that. Now, one thing I jotted down right here, we hear a lot about the Roman Empire, in the New Testament and in the Bible, but we don't see much. We don't hear much about the Greek Empire, do we? Is there much? I mean, I don't know. I don't remember recalling. What about it? Is there much mention of the Greek Empire?
No, it was during the 400 years between the Old and the New Testament that Alexander came up to Jerusalem, and it was the I can't think of the name. But anyway,
Put you on the spot there. I'm sorry.
Huh?
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. There's 3 books written by those guys in the books of the Apocrypha. But anyway, they were the priestly family there, and they came out to meet Alexander's army and showed them Daniel's prophecy, and they spared the city.
That's right. I've heard that before. So.
And then it was, I think it was, one or 200 BC when the Romans overthrew.
Yeah, I know the map. The Roman Empire map here is from 117 BC, so it's kind of in that general vicinity. So yeah, and that's what I have. That's where I was leading to the intertestament period right there, where it's kind of in between. So, but
Maccabees.
What's that?
The Maccabees.
Maccabees, yeah.
First,
Yeah.
second, third Maccabees.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've heard. I remember somehow studying. I think we studied that in World Hit because that name sounds very familiar. So from there, we go to verses 7 and 8, and we see the fourth beast. And if we notice, we see a change here. The beast here it's more it's referred to in a lot of the commentaries as the non-descriptive beast. So let's look at this, see if we can imagine this. And it says, after this, I saw in the night visions. So he kind of it's almost like it's a second vision. And he says, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth that devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and the mouth speaking great things. So like I said, we get something. I'm having a hard time even picturing that. I'm getting more feelings than I am images. And so from that, obviously he's describing the kingdom of Rome, and so the part of the statue from Daniel, we're looking at the legs of iron and the feet of iron and clay. So that kind of ties in with the teeth of iron. Now, when you think of iron, what's besides, iron as far as from a figurative standpoint, what does that usually represent? Strength is one. Strength on one side, or if you're on the other side, oppression, doesn't it? So we kind of get that feeling on that. So it's like the iron teeth is relative to the iron legs, and it's kind of like this commentator said, it kind of represents the feet, the iron heel of Rome, which was on the neck of the world for almost a millennium. And so
So we kind of see right here, as we read that description, what type of feelings does it invoke when you read that description of that beast?
It's scary.
Scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe feelings of dread. You go ahead, next slide there for me, Jeff. So feelings of dread, the same thing. I think that's the Greek Empire. I forgot about my maps there, but before we move on, so that's kind of where the Greek Empire. You can kind of see, it's very similar to what the Medo-Persian was. Now go to the next one for me, Jeff. And then we go from there, and we can kind of see how expansive that the Roman Empire was compared to the other three. So from there, again, the one that looks like a boot, that's Italy. So I remember first time, that's what my dad, Italy's the one, I was having to do maps or something in elementary school. It's the one that's kicking the football. That's how I remember. That's what I think of Sicily. But anyway, and again, I think I've shared this with you. When I was growing up, the only thing I had, one of the few books, I had other books, but there was this, I guess, a book, either a geography book my mom or dad stole from the high school, had all the maps in it. I loved reading that map book. I mean, I could put together the 50-state puzzle before I even got to kindergarten. I mean, I love maps. And but anyway, so we kind of see there, that's 117 AD, so that's kind of the height of that. So that's a little bit before what we're referring to here. But anyway, so dread, yeah. And that's what you think about it, that's what the Roman Empire kind of, and people that, if the Roman legions were approaching here, that's probably what you felt, was dread, fear, and things of that nature. So it refers to the 10 horns, the Roman Empire. It corresponds to the 10 toes and feet. And if we notice right here, this description of this Roman Empire gets more attention than the other three combined, really. So this kind of leads me here to some of this. Now, we've heard fall of the Roman Empire. Was the Roman Empire actually conquered?
Pretty much fell from within.
Fell from within. Why?
Because like the United States, and the United States is going down the path of the Roman Empire, getting more people on welfare, and the Roman soldiers controlled things, but there was not a lot of people worked, and the government couldn't. They just fell from within because they broke up.
Was there corruption within the government?
Definitely.
So corruption, just a lot of things that probably comes from what? Being, I guess pride, I guess. We got it made, don't we? And proud. So corruption there, so they were never, so nobody else really ever overtook the Romans, did they? They just kind of just, and so what happened to, as we look right here, all these different, from this empire, it kind of dissolved into what? Just different countries and smaller states right there of Europe, Northern Africa, like, I think that's, what is that? That's going to be Morocco, Algeria maybe, let's see, that's Libya. I always get Libya and Syria kind of get mixed up. But you can see that on the African part, it kind of comes off. So all these states of the Mediterranean, things like this. Now, so what this particular one I'm really leaning on here, he is, this particular commentator, it says that it fell apart, no one overcame, talking about Europe, North Africa, states around the Mediterranean. He says this, and this is the thing. What's eventually going to happen to the Roman Empire?
It's gone.
According to it's eventually going to be put back together, right? During the end, because who's going to lead that? It's going to be put back together by
all these countries are eventually gonna come back together and join together by who? Antichrist. So right now, if you look at it, there are 4 big prophecies in Daniel. How many of them have been fulfilled already? 3. And then the 4th one, so we're, even though, and that's what this gentleman says. He says the emphasis should not be on the origin of this empire, but the end time. So talking about the period of the 10 horns and stuff. Verse 8, the eyes represent human intelligence and genius, the mouth speaking great things, blasphemy of man, etc. And I only have time to get into it, but read Revelation 13, 1 through 7 if you get a chance, and you're going to see it really ties in a lot to this right here. So I hope I didn't butcher that too much, but I figured if you gave me the book, I could trust it, right? But yeah, it's very interesting to think about the Roman Empire. Is we think of the Roman Empire during that time and not having to think of it in the end time. That it never was, I didn't know that. I knew it fell apart, but I never thought of it as it's never been conquered. It just kind of fell away because of the corruption and the different and all that. So.
The one thing about its visions is each vision that he has shows the beginning and the fulfillment of that empire.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about one person.
Mm-hmm.
So like the lion in the first one, in my understanding, that's just not about Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
But it's about the beginning and the end, where they, their speed, their armies were taken away. Their ability to defend was taken away. They were made to stand on their feet like a man.
Mm-hmm.
A man's heart was given
Mm-hmm.
to them. To me, that's when the
Yeah.
partying was taken. They just given over to themselves, and then they were overthrown. That's the end of the empire.
Yeah.
And then the next one shows the beginning and the end of the empire. The next one shows the beginning and the Antichrist, and you go on to the next one, verse number 9, that shows the beginning of the end of the empire.
Mm-hmm.
So the Roman Empire is still in existence today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not politically, but it is religiously.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that empire is still going. So and from that is where the Antichrist is going to come, from that still existent empire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even though the armies, even though the capital, even though the ruling political parties are gone, religiously it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's more to an empire than just the army and power.
Army and power.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I was kind of feeling that as well. That it's just, and your guy gets into that as well. So it's been very, like I said, there were some things I was like, I didn't really think of it like that, but that's a good point.
The religious aspect of the Roman Empire is going to play a major role in what the Roman Empire portrays throughout the prophecy that's coming.
So that's why I'm leaning on you. That's why I'm trusting your book. So yeah, good stuff, and hopefully we will continue next week. So feel free to correct me anytime. I would rather not, by any means. So yeah, another conference.
Doing a good job.
It'd be a nice, I think, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Where is the slides coming from?
That's just coming, he just got it on, I had it on,
Hey, seen you in a long time. I missed you. You're starting to look more and more like your sister every day.
And we was doing an episode.
Tell her where you go every day.
To my party.
SWAT